Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robin Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties.
It is 12:05. This is Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. I'm Robin Flynn with you until 1 p.m. Joined in studio as always by Martin Spalding from Fred and Martin Mortgages. Hey Martin, how are ya?
Hey Robin.
And we've got LJ Aguinaga of LJ Realties. What's up, LJ?
How you doing?
Pretty good. I saw you guys had a busy week, LJ. Lots of vendus on the Instagram, which is always good to see.
A lot of action. The spring market is definitely back in full swing.
That's good to hear.
I got a couple questions about that later on in the show for you.
Can't wait.
Okay.
Oh, boy. Just a quick heads up. We're going to be joined in studio by a real-life real estate photographer coming up in a little bit. So if you have any questions, if you're thinking about selling and you have questions about real estate photography, you can start texting them in at 514-800. But let's start with our trivia question of the week, brought to you by Felix and Norton Cookies. You can visit their store at the Blue Haven Shopping Center, 3705 St. John's Boulevard in DDO. The first person to text in the correct response to 514-800 will win delicious cookies from Felix and Norton, delivered straight to your door. Our question this week: what is the legal term for a mortgage in Quebec? If you think you know the answer, text in to 514-800. Be sure to include at least your first name. What is the legal term for a mortgage in Quebec? Now, guys, let's start with some of the stuff that's in the news this week. There was a new report from RE/MAX that found that Canadians are turning to, shall we call it, more creative solutions in order to enter the housing market. So how do we feel about some of these solutions? First of all, what are some of these more creative solutions?
So we can start off with the first one is buying a property with family member. Right, so you have siblings or parents, etc., buying a property together. That's the first one. The second option that people are looking at is getting into a duplex or an intergenerational home. So buying a multi-unit property in order to offset some of their carrying costs. And lastly, we're also looking at some rent-to-own options. Okay. Martin, what do you think about these?
You know what? You can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family. So are you prepared to buy a property? So is the other person who's investing with you, are they actually going to cohabitate in your property? Or is it an investment for them and allowing you to get into a property? So I love my siblings, but I'm not sure if I could actually live with my siblings under one roof.
Nice pun.
No, but I had to go there.
I wonder if this would include something like, I think I've referenced this on the show before, but my friends and I all jokingly talk about like starting some sort of compound, like a little community where we each own our own homes, but we're all part of the same lot.
Because the impression I got is that you're buying one house with one kitchen, right?
That's what it is. This is people buying one property.
So, you really have to get along with that person. And then are you just buying with a sibling or a friend? Or are you buying with a sibling who has a family? So now you've got two families cohabitating.
But a lot of people are doing this anyway and renting. They just don't own the property, right? Like I had roommates for years. That was just, if you wanted a house that wasn't a shack, if you wanted to rent an apartment that wasn't falling apart, you had to have a roommate. And it didn't always go well. I had some, situations that deteriorated.
I had some horrible roommates. In the early going. But it was funny because I was so interested by this topic that I started to dig and some of the concerns. So I found the top concerns of when you buy a property with somebody else are fear of risking the relationship.
Yep.
That was at 55.2%. Differentiating opinions on what a suitable property is. So can you actually find someone that has the same taste, same kind of that came in at 47%. Financial irresponsibility of a potential co-buyer. Because ultimately, you're both on title, you're both on the mortgage, so you're both responsible. So if one person defaults, you're left holding the bag. Lack of trust was another one. And the other one was insufficient being familiar with the co-buyer. So do you really know that person? enough to actually live with them under one roof.
It's interesting that people are doing this to buy properties, though, because everything you described, these are all issues that people with roommates think about when they're renting an apartment.
Oh, for sure.
Right? Like, I would never want to move in with my best friend because if it didn't work out, I would lose my best friend of 25 years, So you want someone that is not super close to you, but that you know and trust, that also has like a similar list of priorities. Is a big bathroom more important than a big backyard? Like, there's a lot of stuff you have to discuss, but
Yeah, but renting is short term, right? So now you're making a commitment. You're buying a property. You've paid the welcome tax. You're moving in.
Yeah, that's true.
You're raising two families under one roof. Yeah, you better know that person well.
Somebody just texted in. My mother used to tell us that she loved us too much to live with us.
There you go. That's a perfect
It's
example.
very true. Very true. But I mean, even if you're buying a property with your spouse, these are also things you need to consider,
You
like
should have considered that before you made them your
before you
spouse.
got married.
What's the divorce rate in Quebec?
Exactly. Maintenance expectations, like who's going to do what? Who's going to take care of the inside, the outside? Who's caulking the bathroom tub every few years?
But I got a question for LJ. So your clients come to you. They want to buy a property. Are you seeing an increase in people asking, can you get me a mother-in-law suite? Can you find me a property that I could co-own? Is this part of the dialogue that you're having with your clients?
So the house we sold 2 weeks ago in Chateauguay was an intergenerational.
Well, that's Chateauguay. Chateauguay. We always talk about Chateauguay. I think it's the only place in the city where there are transactions taking place right now.
Well, because it's like the only affordable place to buy a house.
No, it's a
now.
great place.
On TikTok this week, somebody asked, where could you get a home for under $500,000? And I brought back this Chateauguay transaction for $430,000. So all this to say, are we seeing it? Yes. I met with a doctor even. He said he was looking to buy a duplex or a triplex near the hospital because it was close proximity to the hospital for work. And his dream is to have multiple properties and have a retirement potentially from it and things of that nature. So we're definitely seeing it on kind of both spectrums of the equation here. But it's I think the issue, which I wanted to bring back here, is the fact that we just don't have enough supply.
Yeah.
The reason why this conversation is even coming back to the table more so, it's not so much because everybody wants to live with other people more than they already have been and that they're looking for that. It's because we don't have enough supply on the market right now and we're being forced to deal with higher prices. And because of these higher prices, we need an alternative, which is a creative solution.
It's all well and good to say, though, that we need to build more homes, but who is actually going to build them? That was another story I saw in the news this week. Building more homes requires labor, requires people that will actually be on the ground, putting up the walls and putting in the windows. Skilled labor,
yeah.
Exactly. Not any, I couldn't build a house. You don't want me building your house, that's for sure. But
You'll market it.
No, because what the Canadian government came out with is that we need 3.7 million homes in the next 7 years. That's 550,000 homes a year, and there's a severe shortage of skilled labor. So who are going to build these homes? And that's the big question.
I mean, how do we find more people who are skilled? Like, I remember during the pandemic when we needed more orderlies, they had a fast track program to get orderlies on the ground with guaranteed jobs. Do we do something like that for building homes, maybe? Some sort of fast track skilled home building?
Think a lot of these trades aren't super long. They're DEPs, right? They're not super long to begin with. So I don't know that necessarily fast tracking is going to be the solution. It might be bringing in foreign labor. Yeah, as we've seen in the past. I mean, where
are we going to house them?
Agriculture. I mean, again, we're back to this part A, but
it's cart before the horse, horse before the cart.
Yep.
We don't really have too many other solutions because we're not seeing more. We're seeing a drop in people registering for these programs right now. So people don't seem to want to go into these industries. We don't have the labor already. Unfortunately, you're right. We don't have anywhere to house them right now. But if that means that we have to come up with a creative solution in the interim to get us through this hump, to get us past this situation that we've been dealing with for the last few years, then so be it.
I do think that the trades need a marketing overhaul because, I grew up being told, go to university, get a bachelor's, get your master's. The trades were not even an option. That's what parents and teachers were telling us, not to go into the trades. Whereas we need people who are in the trades, and you can make really good money if you're a plumber, especially welder. These are really, really great career opportunities.
Most tradespeople I know who are my age who decide to go down that road eventually are very happy. They work very reasonable hours. They make great pay. Everything is stable. They have an influx of clients all the time. And even if you want to go the business owner route, there's a ton of opportunity in all of those segments because a lot of them aren't on Google My Business. A lot of them haven't optimized their advertisements, their SEO, all of these things. So there's a lot of opportunity. We just really have to be encouraging more people to go into the trades, obviously.
Yep.
Have you tried to get a plumber these days? Have you tried to get an electrician to come by your house or a painter?
You can call me if you need help.
No, but I mean,
it's expensive and hard to get them to come in quickly.
I mean, we have a guy that's been working with us for 10 years. His name is JR. Terrific. He can do absolutely anything in a house. So I called JR. We have a few things that we need to done to the house. And he said, yeah, I can be there by July. I mean, we've got a 10-year relationship with him.
Wow.
And I can be there by July because he's book solid.
That's
so
incredible.
I'm all for the trades.
Absolutely. Maybe we need to be encouraging our kids to go into the trades.
Absolutely.
This is your lingo lexicon on Under One Roof MTL. Appraisal. An appraisal is the process of determining the fair market value of a property as determined by a qualified appraiser. This valuation is based on various factors, including the property's condition, location, comparable sales in the area, and current market trends. Appraisals are commonly conducted when buying or selling a property, refinancing a mortgage, or for insurance purposes. For example, if Stuart in Bay Durfay is selling his house before finalizing the sale, Stu will need to put in a request for an appraisal. They will come to determine his home's current market value. The appraiser will carefully assess the property, taking into account its size, condition, and recent sales of comparable homes in the neighborhood. Based on the appraisal, Stuart and his real estate agent can set an appropriate listing price for his home. This has been your Lingo Lexicon on Under One Roof MTL. It is 12:21 on Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. We're with you until 1 p.m. What's usually the very first thing that buyers look at before deciding whether or not to visit a property? I know I wouldn't even consider a property if there are no pictures of the interior. Every time I see a listing and it's just one photo of the exterior, nope, not interested. Pictures are an extremely important piece of information for buyers and sellers. And if you think that an old iPhone is sufficient for listing your home, I've got news for you. It's not. Professional real estate photographers can highlight the beauty and functionality of the space, making it more appealing to buyers on the market. So, how are they able to accomplish this? In studio with us now is Corey Kaminski, real estate photographer. Hey, Corey, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
Now, we already have a question for you at 514-800, and if you have questions for Corey, you can text them in as well. So we'll start with that question, and it's very broad, very vague, a little bit of a softball to launch you into this one. What is your best advice to sellers to ensure that you receive the best pictures of the house?
Well, it's very important that they declutter their property and depersonalize it because anything that's distracting to the eye will be distracting to the viewer. And so that's my biggest advice. The realtors should definitely be providing a checklist of everything they need to do to prepare for that big day.
LJ, what would that checklist actually look like?
So we have a PDF. I'm happy to share it with you if you'd like.
Of course you do.
But even beyond that, my team put together 2 videos to show them how to declutter, how to make your bed, how to remove stuff from the kitchen, where you basically have an image of, throughout the video, what it looks like cluttered and what it should look like. Removing all the magnets in the fridge, cleaning out the exterior, removing the garbage bins, recycling bins, cleaning up the front lawn, just really making sure that you prepare, removing the cars from the driveways before he actually gets here. All these little details that make a huge differences in the photo to really showcase the property in its best light.
Makes a lot of sense.
So how's technology, Corey? So before it was just sort of still pictures of each room, obviously the most important room's kitchen and so on and so forth. But now you've got the opportunity where you can actually walk through the property, and then you also have the use of drones to give you an aerial shot. So how has it evolved, and what, and this is a joint question for LJ, what is the perfect mix of technology so then when you post this stuff that you get an automatic reaction?
Well, I actually don't do the virtual tours.
Okay.
I find that it doesn't really capture the property. It shows the layout very well, but it doesn't really capture the beauty and the nice characteristics that each property has in the same way a photo does, because you could really compose and make an image really look more eye-catching, whereas the walkthrough really just, you're walking through a property and sometimes it could be a little bit awkward where the waypoints of the virtual tour is.
What about the use of drones?
The use of drones is very important for sure, especially for like a waterfront property or something with a big lot. Those are I shoot drone, and it's a very important aspect.
LJ, what do you recommend in terms of when you want to set it up so that you get an automatic, as soon as it gets posted, you get an automatic reaction?
I mean, the first thing we do is we hire Corey. We've been working together for the last 8 years. So step
Okay.
one is make sure you call him first. What I always explain to people on my listing presentations is that Corey will take the same photo typically 6 to 8 times over. Then he walks around with his flash around the room to really make sure he brightens the entire space up to give one level, crisp, equalized photo, if that's how you even say it. And it really showcases the colors of the room. It really showcases what we're putting forth. And we always get complimented on our photos. So step one is that. In terms of the 3D tour, ever since COVID, we've done it because a lot of the feedback that we received from people was, I didn't like the layout. And unfortunately, I can't change the layout of the property, obviously. So in order to limit the visits that were not going to lead to anything, we do the 3D tour for the layout, like Corey mentioned, and for floor plans that can come along with it as well. So that was the purpose of that. But then any property that's larger lot, anything that, like he said, is waterfront, anything that really has characteristics that you can showcase proximity to parks, to shopping centers, to schools, etc., where you want to see that brought back perspective, if you will, the drone footage is super important as well.
Absolutely. You're listening to Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. We're in studio with Montreal real estate photographer Corey Kaminski. Martin?
What about the seasons? So do you want to see if the owner has some pictures of the house during the winter, during the fall, in the spring, in the summer? Is that something that you want to accumulate, or do you want to just stick to present time?
Well, you definitely want to stick to present time, because if you have photos of, let's say, a different season, it kind of makes it look like a dated listing and it's been sitting on the market long. So even though it's a prettier image, it's not always the most ideal image. But sometimes clients do want to showcase their property in the summer. A lot of times when they capture it themselves, it's not a very good quality image.
What we'll do a lot of the time is we'll reach out to people, let's say, just before the fall, and we'll say, hey, if you're thinking about listing your property in the winter, reach out to us now. We'll send Corey over now to just take photos of your backyard and stuff of that nature so that we have the contrast, we can showcase it. We'll still shoot the whole home in the winter when the time comes, but we'll have these other photos at the end of the listing to showcase your beautiful flower beds and your pool and your decks and this and that, so you really capture both sides of it without dating the listing. We just prepared for it.
That makes a lot of sense, because I see a lot of real estate listings where there are multiple photos from different seasons, which is nice because you want to see what your house is going to look like all year long, right? That makes a lot of sense to me. When we talk about AI, how has that changed your role as a photographer?
Well, there's pretty much just one way that it's changed, and that is the removal of clutter. And I don't just work with homeowners, I also work with a lot of tenants, and tenants are not generally happy that I'm there to photograph their property. And so they don't declutter, they don't go through any sort of process of making my job easier. And that's when Photoshop comes in, and where you could just select something and magically disappears. It's not foolproof, it doesn't always work great, but it really has made my job easier for decluttering.
Given the fact that we rent anywhere from 70 to 120 properties a year, and we bring Corey in to photograph all of our listings, regardless of their price point, even on rentals, that's been a huge help. Because like you said, when we've had cases where we've had even some luxury apartments, kind of $3,000, $3,500 rentals, where the tenant was not collaborative and the rooms were a mess. And we really needed to showcase it in a better light, because when you're charging these kinds of premiums for again, luxury apartment, you need to make sure to showcase it in the best light possible, but you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place sometimes.
And what about virtual staging? This is something that is way more common now, where, if a space is empty, you can add the furniture in post. Is that something that you take care of, Corey?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's very important, because rooms look very small when they're empty, and it doesn't give, people are very visual, and if it's just an empty room, people are not going to see what they could fit in, and we try and make the size of the room proportionate to the furniture we put in, so they can get a good idea.
I've noticed, especially with virtual staging, when there's multiple bedrooms, there's always one that's set up to be the primary bedroom, and then there's always one that looks like it's a nursery or a kid's room. Like, they really want you, part of your job is not just to take pictures, right? It's to put an image in the buyer's mind of what their life will look like in that space, right?
Absolutely.
Have you ever sold a home based on the pictures alone, where someone didn't come and see the house, where they went onto the listing and say, yeah, that's what I want, I'm ready to make an offer?
I'd say that people, the photos get them through the door, right? And that's where a lot of the time photos are imperative, because that's what gets people through the door. To say that somebody has just done that, I've always done at least a virtual, like a video tour. Whether it's on an iPhone, whether a family member came by and had them on FaceTime and whatnot, we've always had that second layer just to reconfirm, if you will. But especially during COVID, I mean, when people had 15 minutes in the property, they had 15 minutes to tour an entire house typically, and then they would go back and look at the photos for the next 12 to 13 hours before they had to make up their minds if they were going to buy the property or not. So it was definitely imperative to showcase the property in its best light and to really have a comprehensive list of photos, including everything in the property.
So hiring a guy like Corey is worth every penny then?
I mean, it's been 8 years I've been doing it.
Okay.
Corey, how can people get in touch with you if they're interested in working with you and having you take pictures of their property?
They could call me at 514-993-6827 or email at corey@mtlinteriors.com.
Very cool. Thank you so much for being here today, Corey. Really appreciate it.
Thanks again for having me.
This is the Mortgage Minute.
What role do private lenders play in Canada, and why would people use their services? This is your Mortgage Minute. Private lenders provide crucial alternative financing options for real estate, particularly useful for situations that do not fit traditional bank criteria. They cater to borrowers who might struggle with obtaining bank loans due to issues like poor credit or unconventional income sources. These lenders are particularly valuable because they can process loans more quickly than banks, which is essential for buyers needing prompt financing to secure a property. Private lenders are also indispensable for funding properties that banks may avoid, such as fixer-uppers or unique homes. While their services come with higher interest rates and fees, reflecting the greater risk they assume, private lenders are often the only option for those who have been turned down by traditional financial institutions or require more tailored lending solutions. This makes them a vital part of the mortgage landscape, filling a significant gap left by conventional lenders.
This is Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. I'm Robin Flynn in studio with LJ Aguinaga and Martin Spalding. Related question to your Mortgage Minute. Do non-traditional lenders, private lenders, do financing for things other than real estate? Or is that really, can you get a private lender to buy a car? Is that a thing?
It's always about collateral, right? So
Okay.
how are you going to secure the loan? And so real estate is an easy way of doing it.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Beyond that, it becomes realistically loan sharks.
Yeah, it's
I've seen
loan
people
sharking.
give loans against,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's when you call up Jose Theodore.
Whoa, did you just go there?
Oh, yeah.
It's an old reference.
In the washrooms at the casino. Yeah. It's the family business.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I referenced before we went to news that we would talk about selling off your portfolio to purchase your forever home. So first of all, what does that mean when I talk about selling off your portfolio? And is it a good idea? So why don't we first explain that first part? What does it mean when you say sell off your portfolio? Does that mean selling off every stock you own, basically?
So in the context of this question, it was really specifically assuming that you have 2 or 3 properties already. You bought a condo maybe when you first got your job, and then from there you upgraded to maybe a larger condo or a home, and then you wanted to also diversify and you bought a duplex or a triplex along the way, and now you're a little bit older, you've started your family, and you're really looking for that forever home, and you kind of want to upgrade to your dream house. And in order to do so, you need a bit more capital. So to get access to that capital, you're like, all right, well, I have all this equity tied up in these 3 properties right now. Let's liquidate them so that I can have the down payment and a bit extra cash for my dream property to move into there for the forever, if you will.
And is that a good idea, or is it better to hang on to some of that equity and maybe buy something that's not quite your dream forever home, but could potentially be an okay
Well, it's
living
always
space?
personal choice, right?
Personal choice. Okay,
It's
but what would
it's
what would
always
you
personal
recommend
choice.
though?
Well, you want to put all your eggs in one basket, or you've worked hard to actually build some equity in these various properties that sooner or later will be generating revenue for you. So are you thinking short term? Are you thinking long term? I mean, it really is a personal choice.
I think there's a lot of questions at play here, right? So obviously from an investment perspective, I can't sit here and say, oh yeah, liquidate everything, put it into one property. Diversification makes a little bit more sense, even if it's across different real estate platforms, a condo, a house, a duplex, triplex, etc. Financially, that would generally make more sense. Now, if we take a step back, luxury market does quite well in general, right? So if the properties are up 10%, 15%, 5%, it's going to follow that trend. And if you're starting at a higher purchase price, well, then obviously you're going to get that upswing as well. So it works. In my opinion, if you're getting into this forever home and you have a solid job, you're going to make solid income, you're going to be able to diversify with other investments over the next few years anyways, this is just one portion of your today move, then so be it. You're going to be in this house for the next 20 to 30 years. You kind of ticks off all the boxes. You're going to be happy and get to fulfill all of these dreams. And you're not over leveraging yourself in the sense, you're still going to be able to purchase other things and keep investing, then great. But if you're really going to put yourself at the limit by doing this and you're not going to be able to invest in anything else for the next 10 to 15 years and this is your be all end all, it probably doesn't make the most sense.
Yeah, you don't want to be house poor, right?
I think a lot of people are house poor nowadays, right? You referenced briefly that the luxury market is doing really well. We didn't mention this earlier, but there was a story in the news this week in Toronto, I believe.
But
that
there was a story about the $1 million homes in Montreal.
in Montreal, it was
Yeah.
Montreal, that homes over $1 million are selling like hotcakes.
53% more homes sold over $1 million in Q1 2024 compared to Q1 2023.
So my question is that because there's more luxury buyers, or is that just a result of home prices increasing? So there's more $1 million homes on the market.
No,
Well, in the article, there were a couple comments because most people now think that mortgage rates have leveled out. And if not, are going to be coming back down. And we know there's a pent-up demand. We've been saying this for weeks now. And so I think this just comes to reinforce what we've been saying for weeks is don't wait because there's a pent-up demand. We think that mortgage rates have leveled out. If not, they're going to start coming down in June and July. So if everybody comes into the market, then we're going to get into another scenario where they'll be pushing the home prices up and there'll be multiple offers. So it'll become bidding wars again. So a lot of these people are going, it's leveled out. I'm comfortable with the mortgage rates. I'm going to go in and I'm going to get the house that I want.
Wow.
I'd say a lot of these people, when you get into these higher price points, generally speaking, are more fiscally responsible. So when we saw interest rates going up significantly, people said, you know what, let's wait and see where the chips are going to fall before we make any large purchases, any large decisions. After 2 years of waiting, and they've been waiting obviously to get into their next purchase because of the larger family, XYZ reasons, they see that things are stable. They have been stable for the last 6+ months roughly, and we only see things coming down in terms of interest rates now. Like Martin mentioned, this means that prices are going to have an inverse relationship. They're going to start increasing. Well, it's time to get into the market. And had it only gone up 10% or so, I'd say, oh yeah, prices went up a little bit. This makes sense. A 53% surge compared to last year. That means that people have gotten off the sidelines and are coming into play. I mean, we're talking about 378 homes that sold for over $1 million in the first quarter of 2024.
Wow, that's
in
crazy.
Montreal.
In Montreal.
Now, would you recommend that these buyers go with a variable or fixed rate mortgage?
It comes back to a personal choice. What's your level of comfort? So again, the articles have been saying that the sweet spot right now is 3 years on a fix, or if you want to play the variable game and you're trying to hedge mortgage rates, maybe in a year and a half, we're going to see some reasonable declines. Certainly the interest rates are not going to come down the same way that they went up, but it's all what's your tolerance to risk? Are you willing to gamble a little bit? If you're willing to gamble, then go with variable. If you want a sure thing, go short term as opposed to you're going to pay a little bit more than a 5-year, but go short term because in 3 years, all the adjustments will have come into play.
But if they start bringing interest rates down, and as you say, more people start flooding into the market trying to buy, won't that affect inflation and then perhaps interest rates go back up? Like, are they going to come down a little and then maybe go back up a year from now? Is that something that could happen?
It's possible.
Okay. Is that something that traditionally happens, or am I just making things up here?
Well, because you're just zeroing in on the housing market. So inflation is comprised of a lot more than just the housing market.
Fair.
And so I think that all the efforts of the Bank of Canada to bring inflation under control, we're starting to see the fruits of their labors right now. Even if there's a mad rush into the real estate market, everything else is still demand and supply. Everything else is still inflation is getting to the level where the Bank of Canada is feeling comfortable.
Yeah.
Beyond that, just
Go
to
ahead,
add on
LJ.
that is the fact that one of the main reasons why inflation is still where it's at is because of the cost of borrowing, because of interest rates, because of the cost of housing as a whole. That's one of the things that is currently keeping inflation up. So seeing as that's already the fact, even if prices go up a little bit, well, it's not really going to shift that perspective much.
The cost of shelter, they call it.
Yeah.
So what else would factor into inflation? I mean, I know this
Food.
is the real estate, but food, that's my number one barometer is how much am I paying for berries for my toddler? That's usually the first thing I notice.
Food prices are starting to level out, not at restaurants, and that's what the literature was saying. But actually, grocery food prices are starting to level out.
Where are you shopping?
Well, I'm shopping where everyone else is shopping.
Yeah, okay.
And but have you been to a restaurant lately, or have you?
No, we don't eat
called
out
Uber-
anymore.
Have you called Uber Eats lately?
We ordered pizza on Friday night.
Yeah, no, it's highway robbery.
Yeah.
MTL Fresh has been saving my life. Honestly, my pre-made meals that I order from them every single week, it's consistent. The prices make sense. Whenever I don't have one and I have to go out for a meal, I look at the price. I'm like, what happened?
Yeah, no, it's really expensive. And berries. My daughter loves fruit, which is a really good thing to have in a child. You don't want your kid eating tons of junk, but my goodness, $12 for a bag of green grapes, $8 for strawberry. It's absolutely insane. I can't wait for summer because I grow all my own produce in my backyard so I can save some money.
But we were talking about gas prices last week, right? And which was an outlier. And so if you remove gas prices, we're seeing inflation. Inflation came down at the same levels it did in February. Everybody said, oh, it ticked up. It ticked up because of gas. But if you take the gas out of the equation, we're going in the right direction. So we're still very optimistic that in June, July, we'll see an adjustment at the Bank of Canada.
You're listening to Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. Guys, one of these days we're going to have to record what goes on during commercial breaks, right?
You just read my mind. I was sitting there. There's a show within the show.
Exactly.
I'm sitting here going, you know what? There's some really juicy comments that take place between the segments. And I think we need to, for the podcast, we need to record the entire thing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, we're talking about, upgrades I want to make to my home, different ways you can own a home. We were talking about house swapping. Like, there's a lot of really good stuff that happens.
Yeah, home swaps. And then as we were looking for alternative financing, I came across crowdfunding. Like, could you imagine actually putting your house up or putting a house up and actually asking a bunch of strangers to invest with you in a property? And then there's also owner financing or seller financing. So we're just doing a deal right now. 2 kids came from overseas to study in Montreal, fell in love with the city, want to stay here. Mom is in a country that is not recognized by the lenders.
Okay.
She has already shipped a ton of money to Montreal for the down payment, but we can't get her financing. So we turned around and we asked the owner of the apartment that the kids have been living in, would you finance the balance? And she said, absolutely. I love these kids, and I'd happily do it.
Wow.
We're thinking about it
That's
right now. My mom has a house in Laval, and with the new capital gains tax, she's like, LJ, let's sell the home before the new tax kicks in. Obviously, we've had tenants there for the last decade. She's been renting it out, and I have a meeting with them this week. It's like, hey, would they be open to potentially a balance of sale? It's like, we can have this conversation and see where it goes.
I love hearing all these different solutions.
Because if you don't need the money right away, then why not accommodate the people who have been renting your place for who knows how long?
Which also, just hearing stuff like that gives me hope, because I find myself on a lot of comment threads where it's a lot of just like dejected Gen Z and millennials who have resigned themselves to the fact that I'm never going to own a home, which is so depressing. That's a really depressing outlook on life. But when there are alternatives and creative solutions,
you got to talk to the right people, and you need a plan, and you got to be disciplined. So once you take that decision, you got to be disciplined about it.
But you also got to be willing to work. I'm sorry, but a lot of the times I'll see some of those comment threads and kind of it almost looks hopeless, right? What steps have they actually taken to put the best foot forward, to actually get things done? And I don't feel like talking down to the kids or anything. I've been there, but I work crazy amount of hours to make sure I can get everything I need done, to make sure I can do what I need to for my family and move forward. If you're not willing to put in the work, there's no more handouts.
Yeah, I think maybe sometimes people are working they have multiple jobs already. They feel like they're already at their limit, and that can be very demoralizing.
Sure.
I think
100%.
Definitely. Anyway, we kind of got off track here. I want to make sure we have time to get to our property of the week before we wrap up, LJ.
So this week I'm highlighting 3444 Rue Hutchison in the McGill Ghetto, offered at $900,000. This property has been used as a fraternity house for the last 30 years. It currently has 5 bedrooms, 2+2 baths, and a driveway parking spot in the back. The property has garnered a lot of attention online, given the fact that it is a fraternity house, and obviously it showcases that way. The property has over 2,650 square feet, not counting the basement of living area. Now, while the property does require some renovations, the potential is really jaw-dropping to turn it into something spectacular. I suspect the buyer will likely turn it into a large rooming house for students, given its proximity to McGill University, like a mini student residence. Stop by our open house today from 2 to 4 p.m. Reminiscing of my university days, my go-to eateries in the ghetto were Chef on Call for their dynamite chicken tenders or the pizza at Alto's.
I went to McGill also, and
so did I.
love the McGill ghetto. It's such a beautiful part of town. When I went to McGill, we rented a house. It wasn't formally a frat house, but we were all students, and we didn't have a living room. We had a ping pong table where your living room would normally be. I remember the landlord just like, he came to do a walkthrough when he was like, what? How do I take pictures of this house? It wasn't messy, but it was just like, you have a ping pong table where most people have a coffee table.
That's
like,
what Corey said when he photographed it. He's like, how am I supposed to shoot this place? I was like, Corey, I just need you to shoot this place. Like, this is what we got today.
Very, very cool. Our trivia question of the week brought to you by Felix and Norton Cookies. What is the legal term in Quebec for a mortgage? We had a lot of guesses. Somebody guessed hypnotize. I'm really hoping that was an autocorrect issue. The correct answer, though, is hypothèque. And it's not just a French word. I learned this week, LJ, that is actually the legal term in English as well.
Say it. Hypothèque.
A hypothèque.
It's a hypothèque.
I didn't know that. I thought that was just the French translation for mortgage. I didn't know there was a different legal term. So you learn something every day. Speaking of things we learned, I also learned you should not take real estate photos on your iPhone because Corey would be very upset. LJ?
On that note, we actually just got a text from a listener. Do properties sell faster with improved clear photos? 100 million %. Mm-hmm. It is a requirement.
Absolutely.
Well, one of the reasons I asked the question about buying a property just based on the pictures is that I had a property in the Atwater Market area, and we posted it, say, at 11 o'clock that morning, and there was a doctor moving from Quebec City to Montreal, and she bought it based on the pictures, and she even asked us, can I buy all the furniture? And we said, absolutely.
Wow.
So we had an offer based on the pictures, but they were professionally done.
And during the break, you reminded me, we actually got an offer on a property just like that as well recently. Sight unseen, no conditions even, and I was in shocked. So
wow. I don't know if I would necessarily do that, but
I think one walkthrough is important.
Yeah.
It's just like test driving a car. You got to test drive the car.
I need to see the space. Exactly. I need to get my dad in there too. Like, I don't make any major life choices until my dad has signed off on it. Like, when we decided we liked our house and we were putting in an offer, I sent my dad to the open house a few days later for him to go scope it out so he could tell me, oh no, you don't want this place. And he was like, no, that's a really good house. I was like, okay, now we can put in our offer. I also learned this week that home ownership may not be out of reach if you're willing to consider some more creative solutions, and that we need more houses, but we also need more people to build them, but we also need places to house the people to build the houses that we need. So it's getting a little complicated.
It's a perfect storm. It really is a perfect storm.
But
go into the trades.
Go into the trades, and I wonder.
I don't know a lot of unemployed plumbers or electricians right now.
Absolutely.
And they're making good money.
I'm thinking of, when kids play junior hockey and they have to leave home at like 15, 16 to move to the Maritimes, and there are billet families that put them up. Can we have like billet families, maybe like government subsidies for somebody to put up somebody who is working in the trades of building houses? Is that a thing? I don't know. I'm thinking outside the box here, guys.
No, but if you got too much space in your house. So my wife and I live in a 3-story house, and in the basement, we could easily turn that into an apartment. There's a full bathroom.
Yep.
There's room enough to put in a kitchenette. The basement is at ground level, so there are patio doors that lead out to a patio, and you sort of sit there and you go, do I really need all that space, or am I just filling the space? If I could generate $1,500 a month by renting out that space, I'm accommodating a need, and I'm generating money.
On that note, we are actually having a conversation today while I was at a visit this morning before the show. Not everywhere is zoned for that. Not everywhere is zoned to turn it into a duplex. Not everywhere is zoned to even just have it as an intergenerational. So
Really?
Part of the blockage here and the red tape that we talk about all the time is that a lot of cities are blocking us for doing these things because, on the original zoning plan, you're not allowed to have that. It has to be a detached home, single family, etc. We need to open these things up so we can accommodate more housing because, Martin, just like you, how many more properties realistically have this option available to them?
Yep, absolutely. We're running up against the clock here, guys. I want to make sure we get out those contact information. So if you want to reach us, info@underoneroofmtl.com is the email, or just underoneroofmtl.com if you want to see our pretty pictures and learn more about all of us. LJ, where can people reach you?
You can reach me at ljrealties.com. You can also find me on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and X. My handle is LJ Aguinaga. You can also reach out to our real estate team at LJ Realties for all things brokerage, so renting, selling, buying, etc. Call or text us at 514-500-4040. Or for all your property management needs, we actually just finished signing the contract with the listener from a couple weeks ago.
Wow.
So we took on a 24-unit building. We're really excited. If you need any help with your property management, please feel free to reach out to me. It'd be our pleasure to help you.
And make sure you follow
and
LJ.
I actually recommended your property management to 2 of your clients this morning because they're looking at buying call it a commercial building, but it's half commercial, half residential. I said, when you get into commercial and you're renting out retail space, maybe you should have a property manager. Call LJ.
Thank you very much.
There you go.
Love it. Martin, where
Martin.
can people get in touch
Fred
with
Martin.
you and
Fred
Fred?
Martin.
Fred and Martin.
FredMartin.com.
I'm just so used to saying Fred first. Like it comes out of Fred
I
Martin.
know it flows much better. It's FredMartin.com.
FredMartin.com is the place to go. For LJ, Fred, and Martin, I'm Robin. This has been Under One Roof MTL.